On that note, we shift focus to more news coming in. US President Donald Trump has stated that he plans to approve the sale of US-made F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. Trump has made such comments before, and now, of course, he plans to host Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Washington, D.C. So the timing of these statements are very crucial. Saudi Arabia had earlier requested to buy as many as 48 F-35 fighter jets, a potential multi-billion-dollar deal that has cleared a key Pentagon hurdle ahead of MBS's visit. Listen in to what Trump had to say.
Yeah, no, I am planning on doing that. Yeah.
They
want to buy it.
F-35s?
They've been a great ally. They've got to like us very much. Look at the Iran situation, what we did in terms of obliterating, we obliterated their nuclear capability. Yeah, I will say that we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35.
Meanwhile, according to reports, the United States will also sign the framework of a civil nuclear cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia during the Crown Prince's visit. With us on the broadcast is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, international affairs expert, joining us from Singapore. Thank you so much for taking our time to speak to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you, if this deal does go ahead and materialize, how could it change the delicate balance of power in the Middle East? We do know that it's Israel that currently has the cutting-edge F-35 fighter jets in its fleet, and no other country in the Middle East does.
You're correct, Pia. Israel is the only country in the Middle East that has the F-35 fighter that has given a qualitative edge in warfighting in the Middle East. That is why Israel has some reservations about the United States selling the F-35 to Saudi Arabia. Of course, President Trump is very much driven by his economic goals. He wants a $600 billion investment from Saudi Arabia to the United States that will boost U.S. economy significantly. So I believe that this deal will go through. Not only that, U.S. and U.S. and Saudi Arabia will strengthen the partnership on AI, because Saudi Arabia also wants advanced chips that will give an edge to Saudi Arabia over other countries in the Middle East. Currently, UAE is leading in that field in artificial intelligence. And finally, I want to tell you that many people have forgotten what happened to Jamal Khashoggi in Turkey.
Yes.
And because time has passed, and I think it is important to recognize Saudi Arabia. It is important to recognize Mohammed bin Salman, because he has modernized Saudi Arabia. He has fought extremism from Saudi Arabia that has radicalized many pockets of Muslims around the world, and we should all support Saudi Arabia's modernization into a modern country in the early 21st century. So I think that there will be very little opposition to MBS, and I think that this is something that is very important and very good for global stability and security.
Indeed, and I also wanted to understand the implications of the civil nuclear agreement. How is that also likely to impact the balance of power? Because we do know that Iran has its own nuclear program that it says is for civilian purposes. But of course, there are larger concerns that it could be developing a weapon of its own.
Saudi Arabia is very keen to build a nuclear capability. That may be difficult at this point, but Saudi Arabia has taken the first steps in that by planning to build a civil nuclear capability. So between the civil nuclear capability and a military nuclear capability, the line is very thin. Most countries that have developed civil nuclear capabilities can develop a military nuclear capability if they want to do that. So that is the direction Saudi Arabia is heading. Right now, Saudi Arabia Pakistan has given the nuclear cover. But in the future, I believe that the United States will do that. Saudi Arabia also seeks a very wide-ranging defense and military cooperation agreement with the United States, both defensive and offensive. And that will also happen. That will be a matter of discussion in Washington, D.C. when Trump and MBS meets. There's one reservation, that is Trump wants Saudi Arabia to recognize Israel so that ties will be normalized. Saudi Arabia will join the Abraham Accords. So I believe that all these things will create greater stability and security in the Middle East.
Indeed, sir, requesting you to stay on with us as we're shifting focus away from the Middle East towards what's happening in the Caribbean. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that he will talk to his Venezuelan counterpart, Nicolas Maduro, at some point. Trump has accused Maduro of releasing prisoners into the United States, but has added that he will be speaking to the Venezuelan president. Take a look at his comments.
Look, he's done tremendous damage to our country, primarily because of drugs, but really because we have that problem with other countries too. But more than any other country, the release of prisoners into our country has been a disaster. He's emptied his jails. Others have done that also. He has not been good to the United States. So we'll see what happens. At a certain period of time, I'll be talking.
Meanwhile, Nicolas Maduro has responded to Donald Trump's remarks, stating that his government is open to face-to-face dialogue on diplomatic issues. Maduro has reaffirmed Venezuela's commitment to diplomacy and international law while condemning the use of force or military threats. Listen in.
Ratificamos que solo a través de la diplomacia se deben entender los países libres, los gobiernos, y solo a través del diálogo se deben buscar puntos comunes en temas de interés mutuo. Así que este país está en paz, este país va a continuar en paz, y en Estados Unidos el que quiera hablar con Venezuela se hablará. Face to face, cara a cara, sin ningún problema. Lo que no se puede...
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Kamala Persad Bissessar of Trinidad and Tobago has emphasized that the Caribbean nation will not allow its territory to be used to launch attacks on Venezuela. The leader has added that the United States has never asked to use the country's territory to attack Venezuela. Professor Rohan Gunaratne still with us on the broadcast. How significant are Donald Trump's remarks? We do know that Washington does not really recognize the Maduro government in Caracas and has been ramping up its efforts to crack down on what it claims are drug peddlers trying to enter the United States from Venezuela. What do you make of Trump's remarks? When is Nicolas Maduro's response to this as well, stating that he's open to dialogue?
So, United States has conducted a number of bombings, attacks against vessels allegedly carrying drugs and criminals from Venezuela to the United States. And of course, the US will continue to do that because US perception is that there is a threat, and it is very likely that it is true because the flow of drugs is largely from Central and Latin America into the United States, and the US has taken a very tough security posture. What is important is Venezuela is very closely allied to Russia and to China and to Iran. And Trump doesn't like that. Trump, in fact, dislikes Maduro because of his geopolitical leanings. So if both these leaders meet, things can change because Trump essentially is a businessman. He's a deal maker. So if Venezuela agrees to Trump's terms, it is very likely that this dispute will come to an end. And of course, the United States and Venezuela will work together to detect and disrupt the flow of drugs and dismantle the criminal networks that pose a threat to the United States. But will that happen? That is the biggest question.
Indeed, and we're also seeing a reaction coming from Trinidad and Tobago, which is located just off the coast of Venezuela. It did in fact host a US warship quite recently, but it has affirmed that it will not allow its territory to be used to carry out an attack on Venezuela. Do you think the administration in Trinidad and Tobago is trying to strike a balance as tensions continue to simmer? Because on one hand, it does have its economic considerations with Washington.
Trinidad and Tobago wants to just survive because the neighboring countries of Venezuela do not want to get involved in a dispute between the United States and Venezuela. So I only hope that these countries will be able to survive amidst two countries having such as having an escalation and tensions. So I think that the world should be very sympathetic to the position that is adopted by small states, especially especially in a situation like this, because they just want to survive. And I think there should be sympathy as to the position that Trinidad and Tobago has taken.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, putting all of that into perspective for our viewers. On that note, we're shifting